When the lawyer read my late uncle's will, my greedy brother shouted, "I bet I'm getting the house and the boat." The lawyer looked up and said, "Your name isn't even mentioned here." My brother went pale. "That's impossible," he whispered. Then the lawyer added, "But there's a private video message addressed to you both." What my uncle said in that video left the entire room stunned, and left my brother crying in public. I never thought I'd be sitting in a lawyer's office, waiting to hear the final words of my uncle, but there I was, trapped in a cold, sterile conference room with my older brother, Seth, who couldn't sit still to save his life. His knee bounced under the long mahogany table, his fingers drummed against the glossy wood, and every now and then, he let out these exaggerated sighs like this was all some big inconvenience. Me? I just sat there quietly, hands folded, staring at the thick manila folder in front of Mr. Caldwell, our Uncle Henry's lawyer. I was trying to keep my emotions in check, but my chest was tight, my throat felt raw, and my stomach was knotted in ways I couldn't quite explain. Henry Whitmore was gone. And even though I knew this day was coming, I still wasn't ready. "All right, let's get this over with," Seth finally said, slouching back in his chair. He smirked like this was some casual business meeting, like he wasn't sitting there waiting to cash in on the death of the man who practically raised us. "I bet I'm getting the house and the boat." I exhaled sharply through my nose. Of course, that's what he was thinking about. Mr. Caldwell didn't react to Seth's arrogance. He was an older man, probably in his late 60s, with a thick head of silver hair and small, round glasses perched on his nose. He adjusted them slightly, cleared his throat, and finally opened the folder. "The estate of Henry Whitmore," Caldwell began, his voice even and professional, "is to be divided as per his final wishes." Seth grinned, rubbing his hands together. "Lay it on me." Caldwell's eyes flickered toward him. "Seth Whitmore," he said, pausing slightly before continuing, "your name isn't even mentioned here." The smirk vanished from Seth's face. His entire body went rigid. "That's not possible." He let out a dry chuckle, shaking his head like he'd just misheard something. "No way. He wouldn't do that. I'm his nephew." Caldwell, unfazed, merely continued, "This will was drafted with Mr. Whitmore's explicit instructions, and it has been verified by all legal means. Your name does not appear anywhere in his final distribution of assets." Seth blinked at him. "No, that doesn't make sense," he said, his voice rising. "I mean, maybe there's a mistake." "There is no mistake," Caldwell interrupted, still calm but firm. "Henry Whitmore was of sound mind when he drafted this will. He knew exactly what he was doing." I barely moved. I didn't say a word. Because deep down, I had a feeling Henry had his reasons. Seth turned to me, his face pale and incredulous. "Adam, say something," he demanded. I met his eyes. "What do you want me to say, Seth?" "That this is bullshit," he snapped. "That we should be splitting this." I swallowed the lump in my throat, refusing to engage. Seth turned back to Caldwell. "This has to be illegal. You can't just," but Caldwell held up a hand. "There is, however, one final message Henry left for the both of you," he said. He pressed a button on the remote in front of him, and a large screen on the wall flickered to life. A video began to play. Henry appeared on the screen, sitting in his favorite armchair in his study. His silver hair was neatly combed, and he wore one of his usual dark blue sweaters. Even in death, his presence was commanding. He exhaled and clasped his hands in front of him, looking directly into the camera. "If you're watching this," Henry said, his voice slow and deliberate, "then I'm gone. And, Seth, I imagine you're furious right about now." Seth flinched. Henry leaned forward slightly, his eyes sharp. "You always thought you were the smart one, the one who could charm his way through life, lie your way into people's good graces, and take what you wanted without consequences. I watched you grow up doing just that, cheating, manipulating, stealing. I gave you chances. More than I should have. And every single time, you proved me right." Seth's mouth opened, but no sound came out. I felt like I couldn't breathe. Henry continued. "You think I didn't know about the money you stole from me? The business deals you sabotaged? The way you've treated Adam your entire life?" I stiffened. "I know everything, Seth," Henry said, his voice colder now. "You were my greatest disappointment." Seth's entire body was trembling. "And so, no," Henry continued. "You get nothing. Not the house. Not the boat. Not a single cent of my fortune." Seth suddenly shot up from his chair, knocking it back with a loud thud. His face was red, his breathing ragged. "This isn't happening," he whispered. He couldn't do this to me." But Henry wasn't done. "But my other nephew," Henry said, his voice softening slightly, "the one you've belittled, underestimated, and used all your life? He gets everything. I felt my entire body go numb. Seth turned to me so fast I thought his neck might snap. His eyes were wide, filled with something I had never seen in him before. Pure, undiluted fear. "Congratulations, Adam," Henry said. "You were always the better man." The screen went black. Silence filled the room. For a long time, nobody moved. Seth's breathing was ragged. He stared at me like I had just stolen his soul. Caldwell, still perfectly calm, closed the folder in front of him and folded his hands neatly. "That concludes the reading of the will." Seth's hands curled into fists. "This is a joke." His voice shook. "This is some kind of sick joke." "It is not," Caldwell said. Seth let out a bitter, hollow laugh. No, he muttered, pacing. "This isn't happening. This isn't happening. He wouldn't just leave me out. He was supposed to leave me everything." "You assumed," Caldwell corrected. Seth suddenly turned on me. "Did you know about this?" he hissed, stepping closer. I shook my head slowly. "No." His eyes burned into me. "Bullshit." "Seth," I said, my voice low. "I didn't know." But it didn't matter. Because to him, it wasn't about whether I knew or not. It was about the fact that I had it and he didn't. Seth was shaking. His hands curled into fists, and his face twisted in a way I had never seen before, like something inside him had cracked. His voice was hoarse when he finally spoke. "This is a goddamn setup," Caldwell sighed, as if he had been expecting this reaction. "Mr. Whitmore made his decisions very carefully, Seth. I can assure you, this was not done lightly." "Like HLL it wasn't," Seth snapped. He turned to me, jabbing a finger at my chest. "He had to have tricked Henry into this, coerced him, poisoned him against me." I exhaled slowly. "You really think that's what happened?" "Yes," he spat. "What else could it be?" "Henry wouldn't, but he cut himself off. Because even he knew that was a lie. He knew what he had done. He just didn't think he'd ever have to pay for it." Caldwell cleared his throat. "If you wish to contest the will, Mr. Whitmore, you are within your rights to do so." Seth snapped his head toward him. "And how long would that take?" Caldwell adjusted his glasses. "Given the nature of the estate and the legal documentation in place? Likely years." He glanced at me. "And Adam will have full control of all assets in the meantime." Seth flinched, his jaw tightening. Years. He didn't have years. He needed money now. I could see it, the desperation clawing at him. And that was when I knew, Seth wasn't just angry. He was terrified. I turned to Caldwell. "What happens now?" "Everything legally transfers to you within the next few weeks," he said. "There are some formalities, but the estate, the house, all financial assets, they're yours." Seth let out a hollow laugh. "So that's it?" he whispered. "I get nothing?" Caldwell nodded once. "That is correct." Seth turned away from us, his hands gripping the back of the chair so tightly I thought he might break it. I stood up. I didn't want to be here anymore. "Are we done?" Caldwell nodded. "Yes. Unless Mr. Whitmore has further questions." I didn't even glance at Seth as I walked toward the door. But before I could leave, his voice stopped me. "This isn't over, Adam." I turned back. Seth's eyes burned into me. His face was pale, his lips pressed into a thin, trembling line. He looked like a man on the verge of collapse. "You think you won," he whispered. "You think you're the good guy here. But you're just a vulture, picking at scraps. I was supposed to have this. Now, it was mine. I should have felt victorious. Instead, all I felt was a heavy weight in my chest." I stepped inside and was immediately hit with the scent of old wood and leather, a smell I had always associated with Henry. The house was still, eerily so, like it was holding its breath. For a long moment, I just stood there in the foyer, taking it all in. Then, slowly, I made my way to his study. It was exactly as he had left it. The bookshelves lined with leather-bound novels, the old chessboard still set up mid-game from our last match. I ran a hand over the smooth wooden desk, my fingers brushing against a silver pen he always used. Then I saw it. The envelope. It was sitting dead center on the desk, my name written in Henry's familiar, careful handwriting. I hesitated before picking it up, my fingers trembling slightly as I slid my thumb under the flap and pulled out the letter inside. I took a deep breath and began to read. "Adam, by now, you know the truth. You know that Seth was never meant to have any of this. And I know this isn't easy for you. You have always tried to see the best in him, even when he gave you every reason not to. You have always believed he could change. But, Adam, some people don't change. Some people won't. And Seth? He is one of them. I know him better than he knows himself. And I know exactly what's coming next. He won't accept this. He won't walk away quietly. And he will come for you. Be ready. Henry, my hands tightened around the paper. My stomach clenched. I exhaled slowly, staring down at Henry's handwriting, his words sinking into me like a stone in water. I knew Henry was right. Seth wouldn't just disappear. He wasn't done with me yet. And something told me, the worst was still to come. The days after the will reading were quiet. Too quiet. Seth didn't call. He didn't show up. He didn't send one of his typical half-assed attempts at manipulation. No guilt-tripping texts, no fake apologies, no angry voicemails blaming me for his problems. Nothing. And that was what worried me. Because Seth never gave up that easily. I spent most of my time at Henry's house, making arrangements with Caldwell to finalize the transfer of assets. Every document I signed felt surreal, like I was living someone else's life. I was officially the owner of everything Henry had left behind, his estate, his investments, his business shares. It was all mine. And yet, there was a nagging feeling in my gut that I couldn't shake. Something was coming. Late one evening, about a week after the will reading, I was sitting in Henry's study with a glass of his favorite whiskey when my phone buzzed. I glanced down at the screen. Unknown number. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. I swiped to accept. Hello? A pause. Then a deep sigh. Adam. My grip on the glass tightened. Seth. There was a long silence on the other end. I could hear the faint sound of traffic in the background. He was outside somewhere. Finally, he spoke. We need to talk. I exhaled slowly. About what, exactly? You know damn well what, he said, his voice clipped. I'm not doing this over the phone. Meet me at Rudy's. 1 hour. The line went dead. I sat there for a long moment, staring at my phone. Rudy's. Of all the places, he wanted to meet at some old dive bar on the outskirts of town. A place we used to go when we were younger, back when Seth was still charming enough to talk his way into free drinks and I was dumb enough to think we were actually bonding. I wasn't stupid. Seth wasn't calling to make peace. But I also knew that avoiding him wouldn't make him go away. So, after finishing my drink and grabbing my coat, I headed out to face whatever the HLL my brother had planned. Rudy's hadn't changed much over the years. The neon sign outside still flickered, the parking lot was full of potholes, and the inside smelled like cheap beer and stale cigarette smoke. I spotted Seth immediately. He was sitting in the back corner, nursing a drink, his shoulders hunched and tense. When he saw me, he smirked. But it wasn't his usual cocky grin. No, this one was different, forced, strained. I slid into the booth across from him. All right, I said. I'm here. Say what you need to say. Seth studied me for a moment, his eyes sharp, calculating. Then, with a slow exhale, he leaned back. You really think you deserve all of this? I knew where this was going. It's not about what I deserve, Seth. It's about what Henry wanted. His jaw clenched. You're just eating this up, aren't you? He muttered. Finally getting to be the golden boy. Finally getting everything handed to you while I get screwed over. I shook my head, keeping my voice even. Henry didn't screw you over, Seth. You did that to yourself. He let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head. You sound just like him, you know that? He took a sip of his drink before slamming the glass back down. I was supposed to have that house. I was supposed to have everything. And what would you have done with it? I asked. Sold it off? Spent the money gambling? Dug yourself into another hole like you always do? His eyes flickered, a muscle twitching in his jaw. I had hit a nerve. Shut the HLL up, he muttered, looking away. I leaned forward. Henry knew, Seth. He knew about everything. The money you took from him. The business deals you tanked. The way you manipulated people to get what you wanted. I exhaled. He saw through you. And that's why he left you with nothing. Seth's hands curled into fists. You think you're better than me, don't you? No, I said. I just don't destroy everything I touch. His entire body went rigid. For a second, I thought he might actually swing at me. But instead, he forced himself to smile, cold, sharp, and full of something that made my stomach twist. You're going to regret this, little brother, he murmured. I met his eyes, refusing to back down. I don't think I will. Seth exhaled sharply through his nose, shaking his head before sliding out of the booth. He tossed a few bills onto the table and gave me one last look. Then he turned and walked out. I sat there for a long time, staring at the drink he had left half finished. I didn't sleep well that night. Seth's last words at Rudy's kept playing in my head. You're going to regret this, little brother. I knew Seth. He wasn't the type to let things go. He was a sore loser with an oversized ego, and the fact that Henry had chosen me over him must have felt like the ultimate betrayal. The question wasn't if he would do something. It was what he would do. And I got my answer 3 days later. I was sitting in Henry's study, my study now, going through some of the estate documents when my phone buzzed. A message from Caldwell. "Call me ASAP. Urgent." I immediately dialed his number. He picked up on the second ring. "Adam," he said, his voice unusually tense. "I was just contacted by an attorney representing your brother." I closed my eyes for a second. "Let me guess. He's contesting the will?" "That, and he's also making allegations against you." My stomach twisted. "What kind of allegations?" "That you manipulated Henry in his final months, isolated him from family, and coerced him into changing his will." Caldwell's voice was steady, but I could tell he was frustrated. "He's claiming undue influence and elderabsy." I let out a slow breath. "And you know that's all bullshit." "Of course it is," Caldwell said. "But the courts will still have to review the claim. If he pushes this, it could drag on for years." Years. That was exactly what Seth wanted. He didn't have a case, and deep down, I knew he probably wasn't even expecting to win. He just wanted to make my life HLL, to stall everything, to force me into a corner. And I wasn't going to let that happen. I knew Seth well enough to know that this wasn't about fairness or justice. This was a game to him. And if he wanted to play, I was going to beat him at his own game. So I did something he would never have expected. I invited him to the house. At first, he refused. Then I added one sentence that I knew would get his attention. "I have something you'll want to see." An hour later, his car pulled up in the driveway. Seth stepped out, wearing that same smug look he always had when he thought he was in control. "This better be good," he said, walking up the steps. I held the door open for him. "Oh, it is." He followed me inside, glancing around as if he were already measuring the place for when he inevitably took it from me. I led him into the study, where a laptop was sitting open on the desk. "What's this?" he asked, crossing his arms. I clicked play. The screen lit up with security footage. Specifically, footage of Seth. Talking to people. Scheming. Lying. The first clip was from a month ago, Seth sitting across from one of Henry's former business partners at a bar, drunkenly ranting about how he should be getting everything, how he just needed to find a way to cut Adam out. The second clip? A recorded phone call. Seth talking to a lawyer before Henry even passed, asking what the process would be for contesting a will if a relative gets greedy. And the third? Well, that one was my favorite. Seth. At a casino. Handing over a large sum of cash to cover an outstanding gambling debt. Money he had taken from Henry before he died. Seth's face went pale as he watched the clips. His smirk disappeared. His fingers twitched. "Where the HLL did you get this?" he asked, voice low. "Henry had cameras everywhere," I said simply. "And he kept records of everything." Seth turned to me, his jaw tight. "This doesn't prove anything." "Oh, but it does," I said, shutting the laptop. "See, if you go through with contesting the will, all of this becomes part of the case. All of this gets submitted to court." Seth swallowed hard. I leaned back in the chair. "And when that happens, your little gambling habit, your history of stealing from Henry, the lies you've told under oath before, all of it becomes public record." Silence. Seth clenched his fists. "You wouldn't." I smiled. "Try me." For the first time in his life, Seth had no comeback. I watched as he processed everything, as the weight of his own actions finally caught up to him. He wasn't afraid of losing, he was afraid of being exposed. Afraid of everyone seeing him for what he really was. A fraud. A failure. A man who had finally run out of ways to cheat the system. His mouth opened, then closed. His eyes darted to the laptop again, as if he could will the footage away. Then, without another word, he turned and walked out. No parting threats. No last-minute insults. Just the quiet sound of a man realizing he had lost. For good. A week later, Caldwell called again. Seth withdrew his claim, he said, almost sounding surprised. He signed an official statement saying he won't contest the will. I nodded, even though Caldwell couldn't see me. Good. And he, also left town, Caldwell added. Not sure where he went, but something tells me we won't be hearing from him for a while. I didn't say anything, because I knew, in my gut, that Seth had finally understood. He had spent his whole life taking, scheming, manipulating. And this time, he had played the game one too many times. And lost. A month later, I sat on the back porch of Henry's house, looking out over the lake. I thought about everything that had happened. Henry's trust. His warning. The choices I had made. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was standing in Seth's shadow. For the first time, I wasn't looking over my shoulder, waiting for him to take something from me. This was mine. My life. My future. And Seth? Well, wherever he was now, I hoped he finally understood. You don't always win. Sometimes, the house wins. And this time, I was the house.